Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 4:06, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Pastor Lorenzo Sewell joins us at 4:30. Looking forward to speaking with him again. He gave a fantastic prayer this week at the inauguration. And then Luke Rosiak will be with us at 5 o'clock. From the Daily Wire, we'll dig into Fairfax County's endless corruption. And you can join us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. President Trump this week signing a lot of executive actions, a lot of executive orders, including one declaring that you can't just have a baby on American soil and then instantly call the kid American.
This next order relates to the definition of birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment of the United States.
That's a good one. Birthright. That's a big one.
What about that one in the court? That one is likely to be passed.
Could be. I think we have good grounds, but you could be right. I mean, you'll find out. It's ridiculous. We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, we'll see. We have very good grounds.
We have very good grounds. Today, the crazy Mazie Hirono, the senator from Hawaii, tweeting out, the 14th Amendment is clear as day. Quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States, ellipses, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside, end quote. Did that ellipses cover anything up? What might be under there? Joining us now to discuss, John Eastman, a former attorney for President Trump and a senior fellow at the Claremont Institute. John, good to have you with us.
Thanks very much, Vince. And yeah, that ellipses is a very significant one. It just proves that she knows that we're right because she's cutting out the language that alters her claim that only birth is all you need. And that language, of course, is and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's the critical thing. And they're all trying to act like that language isn't in the Constitution, but it is.
So what does it mean? So again, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. What does that important clause mean to you?
Well, and we don't need to speculate about this because the author of the language was asked directly about it. Will Native Americans, for example, be automatically citizens? And he said no, because they owe their allegiance to their tribe and only derivatively to the United States. This requires a complete jurisdiction, not subject to any foreign power. And so people who are born on U.S. soil to parents who are merely visiting, like on a work visa or a student visa, or who are here illegally and retain their allegiance to their home country, they're not covered by that automatic citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment. It's very clear. Supreme Court had said so in 1873. The leading treatise writer of the day said so, John Thomas Cooley. Opinions of the Attorney General in the 1880s said so. And it's only in the last 50 years or so that we've somehow developed this notion that those words really aren't in the Constitution. So
to your point, the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868, but Native Americans did not become American citizens until June 2nd of 1924 on the passage of the Indian Citizenship Act. So if the 14th Amendment declared outright that everyone who's born here is a citizen, they wouldn't have had to grant citizenship to Native Americans.
That's absolutely right. And the million or more Mexican guest workers who were here in the 1920s that were repatriated to Mexico after the Great Depression and took with them the children that had been born here while they were here temporarily working, there would have been lots of claims that those children were citizens and therefore couldn't be removed from the United States. There's no such claim ever made. So the notion that this has been longstanding since 1868 is just a blatant lie.
So right now, as I understand it, if you're a diplomat to the United States, if you work for, say, the Russian embassy or something, and you have a baby while you're here, that child does not become an American citizen, do they?
No, they don't. But the folks that contest my interpretation of the 14th Amendment say subject to the jurisdiction just excludes the children of diplomats, and that's all it does. But everybody else, including temporary visitors, illegal visitors, what have you, they're automatically citizens. And that's where the fight is about. The issue, though, turns on what the drafters of that language termed partial or territorial jurisdiction. Obviously, if you're here within our borders, you got to comply with our laws.
Right.
Except for diplomats, because they're not even viewed as, they're kind of viewed as their own sovereignty wherever they go. So diplomats don't even have to comply with our laws. That's why they rack up parking fees in New York to the thousands and thousands of dollars. But everybody else is within our borders is subject to our laws. But they don't owe allegiance. They're not subject to the full and complete jurisdiction that this language of the 14th Amendment requires.
Well, even diplomats are subject to consequences if they flagrantly violate our laws. So you eject them from the United States. They become persona non grata. So there are consequences for upsetting the public good, even if you're a diplomat. And so, you know, here, I mean, it makes common sense to me that you can't just visit the United States, have a child, and all of a sudden you're tethered to our country. Why would, I mean, the point of the 14th Amendment, just to bring it all the way back, isn't the whole point of the 14th Amendment to ensure that former slaves were respected as citizens of the United States?
It is. It overruled the infamous Dred Scott decision that said not only were they not citizens, but never could become citizens. The 14th Amendment addresses that directly, but it addresses it in broader language. Anybody born here to children of parents who owe allegiance to the United States and not to any foreign power are automatically citizens as well. But temporary visitors, and certainly those who are here illegally, the reason this is so important, it goes right to the heart of consent of the governed. We've never consented to make, you know, Chinese birth tourists or Russian birth tourists in Miami citizens. And yet by this false interpretation of the 14th Amendment, they're able to demand citizenship without our consent. It's a violation of the very core principle of consent of the governed in the Declaration of Independence.
What has the Supreme Court said on this subject? There's a lot of, I've noticed a lot of people insisting, oh, the court has ruled on this. They've come down clearly that birthright citizenship is constitutional and that what Trump is doing is unconstitutional. Is it really that clear?
No, it's not at all. And look, scholars throughout the last century have acknowledged that the key Supreme Court decision dealing with this did not address the children of temporary visitors or the children of illegal immigrants. The case is the 1898 case of Wong Kim Ark, and Wong Kim Ark's parents were here permanently domiciled. The court uses that phrase 28 different times in the opinion. And if that decision had said anybody born on the U.S. soil, no matter the circumstances, are citizens, I'll go back to the point you made earlier. We wouldn't have needed the 1924 Indian Civil Citizenship Act. But the fact that we needed that act meant that the Supreme Court precedent in Wong Kim Ark meant only what was at issue, which is the children of lawful permanent residents, domiciled. You know, green card holders, the way we would phrase it today, are citizens. And there's some dispute whether even that was a correct decision, but it certainly didn't go any further than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, common sense, of course, dictates that like illegal immigration into the United States does not entitle you to the privilege of creating American citizens. And vacationing here or overstaying a visa and doing the same. That's like it's absurd on its face, just as a normative matter. And yet we're hearing a lot from the left today that this is a settled matter and you are not to reopen it. So the president uses this executive order this week to declare that his administration's interpretation is consistent with yours, John Eastman, that no, you can't just be illegal and have a child and that child becomes an American citizen, tethering you to the United States. How important is that executive order? And you know, do you expect this to be litigated?
Well, there's been 3 lawsuits already filed, one in New Hampshire by the ACLU, one in Boston by about 18 states, and then one in Seattle, Washington by 4 additional states. And they're all saying the same thing. This has been settled for 150 years. And it's just a blatant lie. And so, you know, we'll see what the lower courts, those jurisdictions appear to be cherry-picked for having fairly liberal Obama and Biden judges on the courts. And it'll go up to the courts of appeals. The Boston one will go up to the First Circuit, and the Seattle one will go up to the Ninth Circuit. And eventually this will land in the lap of the U.S. Supreme Court. And this Supreme Court is comprised of originalists, more originalists than we've had in a century. And I think we're therefore going to get a very thorough assessment of what the clause actually means. And my scholarship on this and the late University of Texas law professor Lino Graglia's scholarship on this. Yale professor Peter Schuck and University of Pennsylvania professor Roger Smith have all dug deeply into these issues in their scholarly research and come to the same conclusion that I have, that subject to the jurisdiction meant subject to the complete jurisdiction, not owing allegiance to any foreign power. And I think the Supreme Court, if they take seriously that scholarship and those original materials, will agree with us.
So then the next question becomes, let's assume, play out hypothetically, that the court does take all of this up and it arrives at that finding that birthright citizenship does not apply to illegal aliens. If they do that, one of the things I keep hearing the left say is that means that people will be stripped of their U.S. citizenship. In other words, the children of illegal aliens who've already been born in America, who are considered at the moment U.S. citizens, they will have their citizenship stripped away. Is that what's actually going to happen?
Well, the executive order quite clearly prevents that interpretation. It says it only applies for children born 30 days after the issuance of the executive order. And that means it's not going to touch anybody who have been falsely led to believe that they were citizens. It's going to continue to treat them as citizens. And in fact, there was a bill introduced in Congress just last night that says the same thing. It doesn't look backwards at anybody that we have been falsely treating as if they were already citizens. Mm-hmm. And I hope that bill ends up saying, and in fact, under Congress's power over naturalization, we're going to make them citizens back, retroactively to remove any ambiguity. People that have come in to rely on this false understanding of citizenship shouldn't have the rug pulled out from under them. And President Trump's executive order doesn't do that. It's forward-looking only.
Finally, I'm reminded, John Eastman, of I've been watching some of the coverage of this debate, and I saw Alan Dershowitz talking about it, and he had suggested that perhaps Congress should pass a piece of legislation that is explicit about the definition of, quote, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Congress would lay out what that means specifically. Do you think that's advisable? Is that a good idea?
I think it is a good idea, and that's exactly the bill that was introduced last night by Representative Brian Bilbar, I think is his name, and joined with about 24 co-sponsors. And similar bills like that have been introduced for, quite often over the last 25 years. I think this one finally has a chance to pass.
We'll see. Well, thank you very much for your wisdom, John Eastman. Always good to talk to you, sir. Really appreciate that today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, John Eastman with the Claremont Institute, a former attorney for President Trump as well. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Phil, our friend Phil, calling in from Fredericksburg on line 1. Hello, Phil.
Hey, look, Vince, the press has been attacking Donald Trump for 9 years straight. They started attacking him as soon as he became a viable candidate against Hillary Clinton, and they haven't stopped. They've been lying about him for 9 years straight, been lying about his family, been lying about everybody who's been working for him, and they've cost President Trump, Donald Trump, hundreds of millions of dollars, and his friends tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And look.
And it almost got him killed. Let's be honest, Phil. It almost got him killed, too, as people were inspired to think that he was the cruel sort of caricature that the left had painted.
But they haven't stopped. Now they've gone full on again. The Democrats are using them again to fan the flames, and they're lying. Somehow the Republicans got to get these people who run these news organizations in front of Congress and find out who is monopolizing. They're monopolizing 90% of the news organizations to tell lies about an American citizen, Donald Trump, and everyone who works with him or lives with him and protects his constitutional rights. It's got to stop. Yeah. And the Republicans in Congress have to find out who's pulling the strings of 90% of the mass media in America to attack this man. He's an American citizen before he's the president. And you just can't do this to an American citizen. It's going on 10 years straight now. Yep. It's getting ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with you. Although, here's some hope for you, which is this. Nobody believes them anymore. Have you noticed that the half-life on these ridiculous scandals is non-existent? People are literally laughing at these goobers. I mean, this week, NBC tried to launch a new attack on Pete Hegseth, and buried in the piece is that his ex-wife denies the allegations that he somehow abused her. She denies it on the record, and yet they published the piece anyway. And the rest of us are left pointing and laughing at this ridiculous sort of Brett Kavanaugh-esque attempt in the 11th hour to stop Pete Hegseth's nomination. And here's one more for you, at least today. Congressman Tim Burchett was on CNN with Jim Acosta. Acosta was asking him, hey, why are you okay with Trump pardoning January 6 people? And Burchett just mocked Jim Acosta into the ground.
This is not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes. Yeah. This is CNN. This is the news. We are asking you to come on and tell the truth.
And that's why more people are watching the Cartoon Network SpongeBob reruns right now, Jim. Look, I left the White House during a riot. My life was threatened. My life has been threatened within the last few weeks, yet there's no coverage of that. And you all continue this narrative of attacking Trump. You just can't stand the fact that he won and that America spoke.
Congressman,
and that,
no,
and that your view is very diminished.
That's not the case at all.
And your view is very diminished.
There's more people watching Cartoon Network and SpongeBob right now, Phil. I think things are improving. That's all I'll say.
I hope so, and I'll tell you what, though, I hope they all go out of business. I hope they all go out of business.
I know. Well, that's what they deserve. That's for sure. But the audience is helping that along. Hey, thank you, Phil. I appreciate your call. All right.
God bless.
God bless you. And God bless our next guest. He's a pastor. We'll be joined by Lorenzo Sewell. You heard him this week. He did an amazing job at that inauguration. You remember this?
God, we're asking you not only that. Let freedom ring from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and every molehill in Mississippi, from every state, every city, every village, and every hamlet.
And Lorenzo Sewell, Pastor Lorenzo Sewell, will join us in just moments. We'll also get his reaction to that crazy anti-Trump priestess who attacked Donald Trump from the pulpit yesterday. All ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Well, good afternoon to you. It is now 4:36 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we'll be joined by Luke Rosiak at 5 o'clock as Fairfax County Schools continues to waste money. And now they're asking, what should we cut? We have some ideas. It's ahead. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. President Trump is back in office, and this week we've been served a range of prayers and sermons. At the inauguration, we were able to hear from the good pastor Lorenzo Sewell, who had this very stirring prayer.
God, we're asking you not only that. Let freedom ring from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and every molehill in Mississippi, from every state, every city, every village, and every hamlet. And when we let freedom ring, we will be able to speed up that day where all of your children, black men and white men, Protestant and Catholic, Jew and Gentile, will be able to sing in the meaning of that old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank you, God Almighty. We are free at last.
An actual message of unity. Contrast that with the Bishop Mariann Budde of the Episcopal Church, who said this yesterday, what was supposed to be a national prayer service.
See upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation. But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals.
Joining me now to discuss all of it is Pastor Lorenzo Sewell, the senior pastor at 180 Church in Detroit, Michigan. Sir, good to have you back with us.
I'm so Holy Ghost happy to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you for having me.
It is always nice to have you here. So I'll get to Bishop Mariann Budde in just a moment. But I want to start with the good news. You spoke at this inauguration this week. You said a prayer there on behalf of the country. What was it like to be a part of an inauguration like that?
Well, you got to remember, there's only two presidents in the history of humanity that had their inauguration celebration on Dr. King's birthday celebration. That was Bill Clinton, and now the 47th president of the United States of America. And I believe that it was a time to be prophetic in terms of Dr. King's policies as it relates to people who are the most disenfranchised, marginalized, and pushed aside, but also being able to hold our country to a higher level of accountability. And I believe that this 47th president that God has called, he has anointed and ordained to take us to a place where Dr. King's dream will be fulfilled.
Yeah, and you could see it during the campaign, couldn't you? It's hard to escape the divine hand in some of these moments where President Trump was returning to the White House, especially that assassination attempt last year.
I mean, absolutely. It was 2 assassination attempts, and we know that with President Donald J. Trump, the 34 felonies that were put against him, everything that was put against his life, and look at him, he stood, and you know that was by the grace of God. You know that was by the mercy of God. Even my Democratic friends have to admit that God's hand is on President Donald J. Trump's life.
Pastor Sewell, what kind of reaction have you received for saying that prayer in one of the most watched events of our lifetimes?
Well, people have come all over. I'm in Washington right now. I just met with the Speaker of the House. I just prayed with him. I spent time with the good Senator Tim Scott today. And quite frankly, everywhere I go, people are coming up to me from every ethnic group. I just had a group of Koreans come, and they just ran up to me in the rotunda just moments ago. And literally, people are so excited about what God is doing, and I'm so happy to be a part of what he's doing in the earth.
You also accompanied the president and the First Family yesterday to the National Cathedral for that morning service, where we just heard some of that audio of the Episcopal Bishop Mariann Budde scolding President Trump and J.D. Vance because she wants to continue to convince children that they're born in the wrong bodies, or she expressed concern that she wouldn't be able to find people to do her dishes at a cheap rate if illegal immigrants were subject to the law. What did you make of that as you were sitting there listening to her do that?
Can you imagine being in the midst of the president of the free world? Can you imagine his family, generations sitting there, the whole cathedral, such power and authority sat in that room? You could have talked about Jesus. You could have talked about his death, his burial, his resurrection. You could have actually invited people into the faith. But you know what she did? She stood up and she practiced theological malpractice. Yes, she did. She used the Bible in a way, and she used her platform in a way that didn't draw people to Christ. She drove people away from Christ. She could have had an opportunity to tell people about how good God was and how God could use our president. Instead of doing that, she stood up and she, quite frankly, practiced theological malpractice. It was horrible, and it was something that was, quite frankly, disgusting. I was there, and after we prayed, actually, after she was done, and we asked the Lord to cover our president and our nation from that message that was, quite frankly, divisive and, to be honest with you, demonic, that she would speak such negative things over our president's life.
The camera shots that we saw were, one, her up on the pulpit doing this political stunt, and the other was we saw a camera, kind of a tight shot of the president, the vice president, and their wives, and I could see both President Trump and Vice President Vance were practically rolling their eyes, glancing at each other, going, "What are we experiencing here?" What was your perspective? What was happening around you as she was doing this?
I mean, it was a gasp. It was almost as if you were in an outer body experience that she would use. She said, "In the name of our God." So as a pastor, as a practitioner, right, for you to stand up and for you to use the pulpit and use the name of God to try to scold the president, she deserves to be rebuked. Now, if people threaten to take her 501c3, everybody would be wrong, right? If people threaten to say that she shouldn't be preaching anymore, that would be wrong. But what she did was the antithesis of love and unity and hope.
Yeah. Well, I will say that her message in particular was poisonous. So in addition to being political and self-indulgent, she was telling the president that enabling the abuse of children and convincing them they're born in the wrong body is what he should be doing. That's actually disgusting. You used the correct word, demonic, when you described it earlier. And the other piece is this idea that we should have illegal labor in the country so we can exploit them to do our dishes. I can't even begin to recognize how that would be a Christian message.
And this is how you know. This is why DE&I never works, because people that are academicians that feel that they can just say whatever they want. Are you kidding me? Does she even have one person in her life that she's ever helped try to get sponsorship in this country? Does she even know what it means to be? I pastor people who are seeking citizenship, and they do not want people in this country that are illegal. They do not want them here. For her to stand up there and act as if she knows what it means to be in that position and to speak for a group of people that are already having a hard enough time trying to navigate what's happening, and to say they're not criminals? Are you kidding me? Theological malpractice.
So what was the rest of the event like? Because for most of us, that's really the only thing we got to experience was this awful moment where she was attacking President Trump. Were there other moments during this prayer service that ended up having some redemptive value?
Well, there was the fact that we got to sing to Jesus and actually sing about his faithfulness. There were moments when we were able to sing about the greatness of our country. There were moments like that. But for the most part, the sermon was the part of it that really pierced the heart of the people, where groups of people came up to me and they wanted me to pray for them. Literally, I was one of the last people to leave. They were collecting chairs. I was one of the last people to leave because people were saying, please, Pastor, pray for me. So I thank God that I was there at the right place at the right time to push aside some of those demonic spirits.
So you quite famously, during the campaign, you welcomed President Trump into your church in Detroit. And the president has been, I think, obviously was very grateful for that. Welcomed you as one of the people to give an invocation at the inauguration. What is it like at your church? How is your flock these days, and what do they think of all of this?
Well, God can use anybody. And President Donald J. Trump is not a perfect man, but name one perfect man outside of Jesus. So people are looking at this as an opportunity for his name to be glorified, for the people of God to be edified, and for the devil to be horrified.
So will we see much more of you, Pastor Sewell, in the years ahead? Do you expect to be doing more?
Absolutely. I'm here right now, literally in the Capitol building. I've been in the Senate all day. I've walked through the House building. I'll be praying for our leaders that are being confirmed, and I'll continue to welcome every single person into the Republican Party, because I feel like Moses. It's time for the Democratic Party to let my people go.
Lorenzo Sewell, senior pastor at 180 Church. What a treat to see you speak this week and join you in prayer at that inauguration, and so grateful to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you so much.
There he is, Lorenzo Sewell. Very neat. Cool experience to be up front right there in a very limited capacity crowd as inside of the rotunda for the inauguration of the 47th president of the United States. And he was right there with the first family as they had to endure these attacks from the pulpit by the priestess lady. So it's just been an amazing week. And I'm grateful that he came on with us. Let me see. I've got Christina calling in from Washington, D.C. She has been waiting patiently on line 3 on this subject. Christina, you're on the Vince Colonnese Show. Hello.
Thank you, Vince, for taking my call. I adore you. I listen to you every day, and I agree with the priest. This priest at the cathedral doesn't represent the values of anybody. As a Latin woman, I don't want my nieces, nephews, my kids, nothing against that. Because imagine if she is preaching for this, what is next? Child pornography?
Yes. Yes, that's right.
Or, raping babies?
You could honestly, you could keep listing the most awful things and go down the list. And it used to be that I would think there's no way the left would enable such an awful thing. And it turns out I was wrong about that. I mean, even to the point, you talk about like pedophilia, this whole idea of minor attracted persons, the left trying to introduce language into the lexicon designed to create permission for that type of awfulness. So you're right. There really is no bottom.
Not only that, we cannot accept this. I mean, our president has been working very hard, and as a minority, we should support our president to make the best so we can bring the country together and make sure that the agenda that he has promised is fulfilled.
Yeah.
For the good of the country, even for the good of the world.
Yeah, amen.
You know,
and you're allowed to disagree with the guy and speak up if you do. But what you shouldn't do is dress up abuse as compassion and then tell people that they're wrong for not supporting it. That's what I'm opposed to. That's what we saw.
I wish somebody asked her what Jesus preached. I'm sure that Jesus didn't promote transgendering. And this is one thing that, Americans, we need to be aware. We need to get rid of all these people. I would, love our president to, consider an executive action to remove this lady from our cathedral. I mean, this is a cathedral that we pay with our taxes.
Well, we have a start this week. We have a start this week, Christina, which is that the president came out with an executive order declaring outright that there's only two genders. So that's a good start. And at every level of our government in our country, it's unbelievable that we have to use an executive order to tell the truth. But here we are. The left has made it that way. Thank you, Christina. Appreciate that call.
Thank you very much, and keep up the great work.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you very much. It's 4:50 now. All right, coming up on the program, I want to talk with you a little bit about all of the border stuff that's going on. There's a lot of border action taking place right now. In fact, just as a little bit of a teaser for you, Tom Homan was on the Fox News channel this morning, and he said, yeah, the deportations, we're already doing that.
What would a person have to do to get a visit from ICE?
Well, for it to be in the country illegally, first of all, I mean, there's nothing in the immigration law that says you got to be convicted of a serious crime to be removed under the INA. So if you're in the country illegally, ICE can visit you. But right now, as we said repeatedly, and the President Trump's been clear, we're concentrating on the worst first, the public safety threats, the national security threats. And just yesterday, in the last 24 hours, ICE arrested over 308 serious criminals. Some of them were murderers, some of them were rapists, some of them raped a child, some were sexual assault of a child. So ICE is doing their job, and they're prioritizing just as the president said they would. So the ICE is performing excellent right now out in the field, and they're going to continue every day.
Yeah, all right, so already hundreds of people, some of the most violent criminals imaginable among those illegals have been arrested, and they're not alone. There's also Bill Maloogian is apparently embedded with ICE Boston, up in Boston, Massachusetts today. And he has been seeing lots of arrests. He said they've already witnessed 8 arrests just on that ride along, including multiple MS-13 Interpol red notices, murder suspects, rape suspects, a volatile Haitian gang member with 18 convictions. How disgraceful is it that these are all people the Biden administration knew were in the country and refused to go pick up? It's not like the Trump administration just discovered, oh, they're here. The federal government knew that. It just took a change in leadership to actually take action on it. Bill Maloogian says there's also collateral arrests going on, where Immigration and Customs Enforcement have begun arresting illegals who weren't actually their initial target, but in that case, they were with the MS-13 gang member who had been released by a sanctuary jurisdiction yesterday, with an ICE detainer not honored. Tom Homan's been warning, it doesn't matter if you're violent or not. If you're with these violent illegals when we pick you up and you're not here legally, you're getting deported too. It's happening. Promises made, promises being fulfilled as we speak. We're going to talk in mere moments to Luke Rosiak with the Daily Wire. A closer look at Fairfax County, Virginia, which is facing a massive budget deficit after wasting so much taxpayer money. And now they'd like to know, what should they cut? We'll talk about it ahead with Luke.